It's pretty acknowledged today that willpower is not a great method for motivation. It requires effort, sometimes tremendous effort, and that eventually runs out and we feel tired and we lose motivation. But what if there was another way to motivate yourself? What if there was a way to motivate yourself that didn't run out, that didn't require effort and was easy to do?
Welcome to Share.care, an all-inclusive community sharing experience, strength, and hope to create strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships. Share.care communities work toward every individual feeling safe, valued, and heard, free from the threat of danger, pain, or harm. Each episode, founder Damian Andrews explores the principles underpinning Share.care and invites expert special guests to share their knowledge so you can easily reap the benefits so many others experience. You hold the choice to create your future. Let it be with strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships.
Hello and welcome to an On the Couch episode of the Share.care podcast. Our belief is that global peace starts at home. Feeling safe, valued, and heard gives you the foundation to confidently step out and make the world a happier and safer place for everyone. Because in today's world, it's in your own selfish best interest to help others. What we're talking about today is motivation and how to maintain motivation. And there's a lot. Well, I'm not going to get into the detail about willpower because we mentioned that in the intro. But willpower, it requires, the whole concept of willpower requires that you put in a lot of effort, that you struggle and strain, and that you eventually get there, that you stay determined, that you stay motivated. It requires such a tremendous amount of effort, and it doesn't work. It doesn't last for long. You need to have rest. You need to take time out to be able to come back and give yourself that motivation again. And this is why people constantly fail when they try to rely on willpower to try and move that forward. But there are so many other people that succeed tremendously and do it seemingly effortlessly. And I'll put myself in that category. For me, achieving tasks is relatively easy. So how do I do that? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to touch on some things that seem like new ideas, but I'll actually show you that they've been around for a long time. They're just hidden in different ways, and we've forgotten and probably overlooked that. And that's something that I want that I really reiterate a lot. That life is pretty simple. The instructions have been there for a long time, and we overcomplicate it. And then I think because we've overcomplicated it, we then rationalize, it can't be that simple because we've been fluffing around for a long time. And as soon as we let go of that and go, okay, well, maybe you did mess up. Well, that was my choice anyway. That's how I dealt with it. Went, oh, right, I messed up. I got it wrong. It is actually quite simple, and it's my fault that I tried to do it differently. And as soon as I accepted that, my life was pretty easy. But you might need to go through a different process, whatever works for you. But what we're going to talk about is, the chemicals in your body, not external drugs, but ones that are there naturally. And we're talking about dopamine, serotonin, and to part to endorphins to a slight part, and there's the other one which is oxytocin, which we won't touch on so much in this podcast. We'll deal with that. There's certainly from the perspective of creating intimacy, connection with another person. When a lady gives birth to a child, her body is flooded with dopamine because it's a bonding chemical. It creates that bond. But there's ways that you can use that to create relationships with people, and that's whether it's intimate relationships or just friendships or even business relationships. You can tap into that oxytocin, but that's a topic for another podcast. In this one, we're going to focus on how to have unlimited motivation. And for that, primarily, we're going to be looking at serotonin and dopamine. Mostly dopamine, but serotonin kicks in as well. And this is where people struggle, because what they do is, and this is a common, and maybe we've taken the fitness, you know, the mantras put forward and the marketing put forward by fitness too seriously or too literally. I'm not sure what it is, and I really don't want to get into that because it doesn't matter. But what has happened is we've shifted our thinking so that we reward ourselves when we achieve the goal. So we work really hard, and then we achieve the goal, we reward ourselves. It's like, yeah, when I do this, I'm going to have it's as simple as when I finish this study, I'm going to have a snack, I'm going to have an ice cream, or I'm going to go out and party, or whatever it is. But at the end of the day, we're rewarding ourselves when we achieve the goal. So what we're doing is we're giving ourselves that dopamine hit when we achieve the goal. And as we do that, what we're desensitizing ourselves to the process of achieving the goal. So we're working really hard, we're struggling, and then we get there and we go, yes, I've got the reward now. And we do that over and over again. And what happens is, for most of us, when we compare the time period to achieving the goal to the actual achievement and that reward period, let's say you've studied for a month for an exam, and you've worked really hard. And so that's a month of study. You do the exam and you get the result and you go, yes, I passed, and you're excited about that. And that reward process, probably lasts, depending on the person, but somewhere between maybe half an hour to a couple of hours, where you go, yeah, that was really good, and you get that dopamine rush. You feel really excited about it. But for that period of a month that you were studying, you weren't feeling that great about it. And that's where the willpower kicks in, because you're not feeling great about the study, you're focused on the reward, you're not going to give yourself pleasure until you get the reward. So the effort becomes that you need to do to achieve the goal becomes harder and harder over time. So we're not talking about just this one incident of studying, but let's say you're studying for 12 different examples, 12 different exams, not examples, 12 different exams. And you've got an exam a month. This is a hypothetical example, it's just made up. But for a year, you've got 1 month of study, exam, 1 month of study, exam for 12 times. And so you spend most of your year focused on this outcome, that you've got to work really hard. And then you get the reward. You go, cool, I got the reward, and you feel good about it. And then you work really hard again and you get the reward. And then you work really hard, and you're creating a process where the majority of your time spent is hard work, is hard effort, is struggle, is slog. And that doesn't feel very good. So the more you repeat that, the harder and harder it is to motivate yourself to take the action to do what you need to do to get the reward. So you actually you're training yourself to make it more difficult to actually start the process. So as your year progresses through these 12 exam studies that you've got to do, it gets harder and harder to the point where you really have to, you really want that reward to achieve, to actually get yourself to study. And if the reward is the same, if the reward is not increasing, well, then diminishing returns kick in, because it's the same reward. You've had that reward, and the next one is the same reward. So that reward actually has to get bigger and bigger in your mind to actually motivate you to do that. And there's studies on this which have occurred, where what they did is they took children, young children, that like to draw, and they sat them down, and they like to draw, so they were sitting there and they like to draw. And then what they did is, these kids who love to draw, they just enjoyed drawing. They didn't need any motivation, they just enjoyed drawing. What they did was, then they rewarded them at the end of a drawing. So they might give them a gold star or something like that. Now remember, they were doing it, they were loving it, they were enjoying it. And now what they've done is said, oh, wonderful drawing there, and give them a gold star. And then they do another drawing, wonderful drawing there, and they get a smiley face or something like that. But they'd give them little rewards to make them feel good. what then they did, after a while, they took away the reward. And what happened was those children weren't as motivated to draw anymore. Now, this was something that they naturally enjoyed doing. They just enjoyed doing it. But after they were rewarded for it and they got that dopamine rush at the end, and then that was taken away from them, all of a sudden something they enjoyed doing was not pleasurable anymore because they weren't getting the reward at the end. And this is where it highlights the importance of linking the reward to the end. So what that's shown is that you take the reward away, that the exercise isn't as pleasurable anymore, even though it was already pleasurable before. And so what has happened is, for those children, the pleasure of doing the drawing originally, because they were getting pleasure. So while they were doing the drawing, they were getting a dopamine release while they were doing the drawing because they enjoyed it. Because that's what happens. That's what makes you feel good, is the releasing of dopamine in your body. Your body's creating it. And there's a number of ways that it creates, and we'll get to that in a minute. But what happened was, with the children, is they were enjoying it, so they were releasing dopamine through the process. Then they were getting a reward, so they were getting this extra dopamine kick at the end for the effort that they did. And then when it was taken away, so what it was creating a disconnect between, they weren't so much getting the reward, they weren't so much getting the dopamine released during the drawing anymore. They were getting it at the end, and it shifted. And therefore, when that reward was taken away, they didn't enjoy doing it as much anymore because they'd trained themselves away from getting the dopamine release from doing the work. And this is where we can actually now we recognize that we can actually use that to our advantage. And the thing is, this is not a new thing. As much as it sounds new, I mean, yes, we understand the dopamine process and things like that, but it's not new. And I'm going to refer to a couple of movies here. And one was from 1964, and it's the movie called Mary Poppins, which is, and it was I haven't seen the remake, and I think I watched the original when I was a kid, so I've only seen a little bit of it for research for this. But there was a part in the show where the children's room was a mess, and then Mary Poppins talks about, and she says, these are the words that she said: "In every job that must be done, there is an element of fun. Find the fun, and the job's a game." And that's interesting when you think about it, when you connect that to that study of the dopamine release while doing the drawing, the kids' dopamine release while doing the drawing. The drawing was fun for them. The doing of the drawing was fun for them. They treated it as, let's say they treat it as a game, but either way, they treated it in a way, they thought about it in a way that gave them that dopamine release. And then when it shifted, so we get the dopamine release from a reward, all of a sudden the drawing's not so much fun anymore. It's not a game anymore. And this is, when you think about that, using that example of the study, we go, okay, I'm going to work really hard, I'm going to struggle, I'm going to fight through, and I'm going to get this reward at the end. Same thing is happening there. We're not treating the effort, the effort that we're doing to get to the goal, as a game, as is fun. So we're not getting that dopamine release. And the other movie I want to refer to, so we're going back even further now. This is nearly 100 years old now. Going back to the movie Snow White. And there's a little song in there called "Whistle While You Work." It won't take as long when there's a song to help you set the pace. Say that again. Whistle while you work. It won't take as long when there's a song to help you set the pace. And again, they didn't really understand back then about, dopamine and serotonin and all those things that make you feel good and how the mind works to produce that. But intrinsically, that's the right word. So if it's wrong, correct me. But they knew that making yourself feel good while you're doing something helps you to get it done. And this is where, when we think about it, and we know this to be true now, because when you think about video games, video games are set up very specifically and they're designed very specifically. It probably wasn't thought about so much initially when they first started, but it certainly worked that way. And then later on, as we became more sophisticated in our understanding of how the mind works and how we create pleasure, video games are very specifically set up to give you dopamine releases as you move forward. So what happens, you as you're, I remember there was a video game, it was like Mario that I played, but it wasn't Mario as a kid. And I remember, or maybe it was Mario. Anyway, it was a video game. It was one of these old ones where it was very digitized in the way it would come across. It was one of the early video game machines, and you move the character along. But as you went along, there was always, as you moved along, there's always little things to get. So you'd click on something and you get a gold coin, which I think that is in Mario. And you do all these different things, but almost every step of the way you get these little rewards which would keep you motivated. But there was always then bigger challenges as you went through as well. So it was designed in a way that you got these rewards that made you feel good, and then there was also a bigger goal that you're working towards, which gave you a reward as well. And there's the big goal at the end of completing the level, or completing clocking the game as it was known. I don't know if that still happens anymore. I watch my son playing video games and it doesn't seem to be an end, whereas when I played them they had an end, and we got that rush. But the point is, it was designed in a way to create dopamine releases, whether deliberately so at the beginning, but certainly later on video games were created that way. So how does that relate to real life? Well, when I think about it, I mean, there's been a number of things, because from my perspective, I've always, when doing things, especially, I don't like repetitive tasks, to be honest, and I really try and avoid them. But when I've had to do them, I've tried to find a way to make it enjoyable. To the extent now that even, I think I've turned a little bit into Forrest Gump, to be honest. And I used to have a gardener that would do all the lawn mowing and things like that for me, had for a long time. And then I bought myself a battery operated lawnmower that was self-propelled. I deliberately made it self-propelled because I've got a large yard down the beach. And I actually enjoy the process of mowing the grass. But I didn't, because I didn't want to do it. But then I made a choice that I wanted to do it, and I wanted to enjoy doing it. Now, obviously, not having to push the mower helps a lot because it's self-propelled, but I still have to go out there and do it. But I enjoy the process. I tell myself that I'm going to enjoy the process, and that's I'll come to that in a minute about this in telling yourself that you're going to enjoy it. Because I remember another time, for example, I was working and doing some contract work. This was before I actually went and started a degree. I was fluffing around between jobs after I'd left the army, and I wasn't really highly skilled at anything. Well, as far as employment qualifications goes, I wasn't, and so there wasn't many jobs that I could do other than repetitive, labouring jobs or other bits and pieces, or data entry, that kind of thing. But there was one where I was working for a it was actually an internet service provider, one of the first ones around, that was floated on the stock exchange. And I remember when they first floated, the price went through the roof. But my job there, they had all these spreadsheets that had to be sorted through. This data had just been dumped into spreadsheets, and so I had to sort through that. And I treated it as a game. It's like, okay, what ways can I find to make sorting this data. So I'd muck around with, sorting the columns in certain ways so that I could then manipulate the data and move it across and sort it all out. And it was a ridiculous amount. I think it was something like 20,000 line items in one spreadsheet that I had to sort out and make comprehensible. And not only, did I enjoy doing it. I made it so I enjoyed doing it. So I made it a game. But I also was showing, the manager there, going, oh, I've done this and done that. And so they were telling me, wow, that's really cool. That's really cool what you're doing. Show others what you're doing. Because it wasn't just me doing all of it. There was just so much data to sort through. There was other people doing it as well. And so I was getting that rush as well. So I was giving myself a rush by saying, okay, how do I make this game? How do I make this fun? And I found ways of making it fun. And also too, I was getting compliments from other people saying, oh, you're this is great what you're doing, fantastic. And so I'm getting a double hit of dopamine rush and I'm really enjoying it. And that's that process that I've implemented many times when I've been doing tasks that I didn't want to do. I was like, well, I'm going to enjoy it. I told myself that I was going to enjoy it. What I didn't realize that I was doing, and there's research to show this now, is when we talk about dopamine release, there are a number of ways that dopamine is released. But one of those ways, and the key way that it's released, is from your thinking. How you think determines the dopamine release in your body. So you telling yourself this is going to be fun actually causes that dopamine release. And that's interesting when you think about it from the perspective. I remember listening to Arnold Schwarzenegger talk, and he used to talk about how he'd go to the gym and people would be complaining about working out, but he'd go, I used to love it. I can't do his accent. I apologize. Well, I could if I practiced, but I haven't, so I'm not going to make an idiot of myself trying to I'll be back type thing. See, can't do it. But what he talked about was he'd go to the gym and he said, I love doing those extra reps. I love doing it. I enjoyed doing it, was what he was telling himself. And that's where, when you think about it, the reason he was able to be motivated to do that when the others were not motivated was because the others were saying, they were complaining about it. And when you're not in that right mindset, your brain doesn't produce the dopamine. But when you actually make yourself and tell yourself, this is going to be fun, I'm going to enjoy this, all of a sudden this dopamine is produced. And that's what, every day, my day is set up per the Exceptional Effort Max Time program that we have. And I set it up when I set out my day. I'm telling myself, okay, this exercise, and some of these tasks are quite onerous and require some thought and a lot of thought and in some cases a lot of effort to do during the day. But it's as I'm writing out my plan for the day per the Exceptional Effort program, I'm telling myself this is going to be fun. This is going to be great. I'm going to enjoy doing this. And as a result of that, even before I've started to do the task, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good about it, talking about it now. I'm feeling good about because I'm saying I'm going to enjoy this. I'm feeling good about it. I'm creating dopamine in my body right now, in my mind right now, as I'm talking to you. I can feel it happening. And you can do the same thing too with that. This is where you can create that unlimited motivation. It's focusing on, the process of not only you're thinking about the outcome, this is what I want to get, but it's like, I'm going to enjoy the process of getting to the outcome. And that's the difference. It's coming back to what those children were doing with drawing. They were enjoying doing drawing. They were enjoying the process of drawing to have a beautiful picture at the end. So they were creating dopamine while they were drawing. And this is where you want to make your focus. It's that process of creating that dopamine release, while you're doing it. And that's the The ironic thing about this, and this is where I say life is quite simple. To create that dopamine release while you're doing something, all you have to do is say, I'm enjoying this. I'm going to enjoy this. This is going to be fun. This is going to be a game. I'm going to treat it like a game. I'm going to make it a game for me. I'm going to make it fun. I'm going to whistle while I work. You know? In every job that must be done, there is an element of fun. And part of that fun can be whistling, whichever way you're doing it, but your mindset, and your mindset is something you choose. It's your choice. You choose. Your mindset will determine whether you enjoy it or not. And you choose your mindset. So choose a mindset in a way that enables you to enjoy the task. And it's as simple as telling yourself, I'm going to enjoy this.
Thank you for being part of the Share.care community and helping people around the world prosper. You're creating a bigger pie for everyone to share. The more people contributing to the world being a better place, the better the world becomes for others and for you.